I think AI just comes into play when it comes to content, and it's really surrounding just captioning videos, literally putting captions on the video, like the words,
Right.
and then
Which is everywhere now.
also captioning like the social, like what you're actually going to post. So the wording. So the app that I use, one of my favorite tools, is the app called Captions. And it's on mobile only, but so I'll create a reel, 60 seconds, I'll upload it to Captions. It generates all those captions for me. And they just came out with a feature a couple days ago where you can add emojis. It'll automatically add emojis. It'll automatically add photos and video. So like it'll go on a site, a stock site, grab a photo, and if it hears you saying something, it'll add that into your video.
Does it do like a sound effect?
It could, yeah. So there's like automatic sound effects. There's all sorts of stuff. There's eye contact. There's one that's like eye contact. So if your eye drifts off the screen, it can like keep your eye on the screen. I didn't use it yet. I tried it and I thought it actually looked really good, but there's something about it that I was like, this looks like.
Well, there's a threshold for how polished your content can be.
Yeah, this felt so polished,
Right,
that it felt off to me.
right.
And the times where I'm talking, even right now, my eye goes to the corner of the room or whatever. It's just natural. It's how I talk. So this kept my eye on the screen the whole time, but then it just felt so unnatural that I was like, I turned it off. So yeah, AI, that's been AI for me. I have not used it really for like, there's nothing logo design type stuff. Like I'm sure there's people use it maybe like generate ideas or generate a logo or something.
Journey stuff. But it's not, it would be good for ideas. It would not be good for, like, you can't like pull and
Export it.
to my knowledge, you can't be like, oh, hey, now give me the AI file. You know what I mean?
Ironically, the AI file.
Right. The Adobe Illustrator file.
Yeah. AI versus AI.
Yeah.
Can AI output AI?
Like, it doesn't shoot a vector, it shoots an
image,
static image
that you can download as a JPEG or something. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, man. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not against it, but
I feel like, I told this to my wife a couple weeks ago, I feel like when I'm explaining AI to people that haven't really caught on to it yet, which is most people that I come in contact with, they haven't, like, they'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen that on the news or on the whatever, on the Facebook.
Artificial intelligence. They have like 3 teeth.
Yeah.
We do live in a pretty like rural.
Yeah, sure.
Like like largely speaking, the county is like.
Yeah, it's true. And it's very, I would say it's conservative. I'm not even speaking politically. I'm speaking like just values, and like everything is approached with caution and like, this is the way we've done it for a long time. Why would we change? Right. And it's been largely beneficial in this area, because this is a very productive, and it's got a lot of resources. You know, like Lancaster County's got. It's one of the agricultural jewels of the country. So it's been very beneficial in this area. But yeah, I feel like when I explain AI to people, it's a lot like 15 years ago when I was explaining podcasts to people. And like, I had started listening to podcasts. Remember, I had, my family was on Verizon, so I couldn't have an iPod yet, or an iPhone yet. I had the iPod.
They were only with AT&T.
Only AT&T.
Exclusively.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. When the phone came, when the OG iPhone dropped, it was AT&T Singular. There was a weird like Singular and AT&T were merging, and eventually it became just AT&T. But that limited me, and the price point limited me from getting an iPhone. My first iPhone was an iPhone 5. Anyways, at the time I had a Motorola, I was using Stitcher, which is still around, to listen to podcasts. And I could listen to some of my favorite radio shows that people were turned into podcasts, but I could also listen to some of the early podcasts. Like I remember the WTF podcast with Mark Maron was one I listened to a lot, and he would interview comedians and expanded to other personalities as well. But anyways, I was explaining this to people just right over their heads, like they just did not understand podcasts. And I feel like AI is the same way right now.
Yeah.
But the thing is AI is going to take off a lot faster than podcasts. Like podcasts, like slowly over time took off to the point where like now it's probably like 80% adoption or whatever, in our generations, 80% adoption. Then maybe like, older generations, it's 50 or whatever. So yeah,
Dude, there was
I
a
feel
time
like that's where we're at.
There was a time where we paid for ringtones. I paid like 89 cents or 99 cents for a ringtone, right? Like back in the day. Or I like recorded it myself, right? Like by the car, press record and whatever. It was janky. But now I cannot stand if I hear the sound of my phone. Like if it goes off, I'm like,
The only time I hear my ringtone is if somebody calls me while my AirPods are in.
yeah.
Then I hear my ringtone.
Oh, I hate auto
Cantina
announce.
theme from Star Wars, so it doesn't bother me.
It's
I
just
love
funny,
it.
man, how culture changes. Like there was a point where you had your phone on loud so that when someone called you or something, like people could hear the ringtone.
Yeah.
Like that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
When like the chocolate, I remember Verizon had like
Yeah.
the phone called the chocolate. I forget who made it.
Totally. Yeah, who made
my-
the chocolate?
my-
I totally remember that though.
Was it? LG chocolate.
LG chocolate.
Yeah.
All right, all right.
Chocolate. I remember so
Devin is the invisible voice in the corner.
yeah. So I remember
Yeah, yeah. Look it up,
Totally.
Devin.
Yeah, look it up. Really quick from this is just kind of fun for phones. I think my first phone was the first. It's called the Google G1. I think it was HTC. It was like G1 or something. I think it was the first iteration of what today is the Android, the most popular Android phone. I forget what it's called. The Galaxies.
Oh, okay.
So the G1 was like the first iteration of that. I had T-Mobile. And then I was almost exclusively, do you remember the Sidekicks? T-Mobile Sidekick? And it was the phone that was
yeah.
like this. And when you flicked it, it went,
out.
whoosh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was my speed, dude. It was all like they just
Well,
marketed.
those are so tactile too. Like
my
that.
word. Just that
Like
feeling
my
of,
kids with flip phones now, like we have some like old flip phones around the house. And I mean, my son will just carry that around with him all day because flipping it open, touching the
pressing it.
buttons.
Yeah, dude. There was nothing like it. The QWERTY keyboards and like it just felt so good. And then so anyway, ironically, my first iPhone was I think iPhone 5, which is when they went to the squared off sides. Or no, the squared off sides were there, but it was like I remember having a black iPhone. It was all black, and I think
iPhone
it was
5
the
was the first elongated screen.
Yes. Yep.
So it was the same form factor as the 4 in terms of like the metal band, like squared off. It's actually a lot like the phones they make now, minus the big camera bump.
Yeah.
But then they elongated it, and that was the first one that was available on any network. So I got it. I mean, like literally stayed up till
Did you get all black, the black one?
I think it released at midnight Pacific time or whatever. So like set an alarm or stayed up. I don't remember which one and ordered it.
Yeah. Did you get the black one?
Yeah. I have the teardown now, that frame teardown over at my desk.
Nice.
Because
that was my first iPhone too, which is
was
crazy.
a moment for me. And it was delivered to the place I was working. I had it delivered to work because I knew it would come in the middle of the day. I didn't want it to go home and not sign for it. So I had it delivered to work. And like they announced it over the loudspeaker to me because they knew how jazzed I was. So, like, Mitch, your iPhone's in. And, like people gathered around while I opened
You're
it.
walking to the front desk and you're just like, people are high fiving you and like,
I was
confetti cannons
known as an Apple nerd even back then.
So I went from Apple iPhone 5, and then I think I jumped to the 6, and then I skipped 7. I did 8, and then I went from 8 to 10 because 10 was the big. That was the jump to the all screen. That was there was no 9. 10. There was no 9. It just
the
went
iPhone
8.
X.
Yeah, iPhone X. So the iPhone 10. I had the 10, and then I did 12. I skipped the 11, went to 12, and then I jumped to 13, and I skipped the 14. Now I'm gonna get the 15 this year. So historically, I've been on every other year cycle.
Yeah, that's usually what I did. I actually went 3 years before I got the iPhone 13. I went from 10 to 13.
I just love, like, I saw some leaked, and we can keep going, but I saw some leaked photos of the iPhone 15, and
we'll see. Yeah,
and I just like
I will be. I actually am considering going back down to the mini. I never had them any, but like I kind of like I just now I'm like anti.
Yeah.
Like I've got like my phone is on lockdown. Like I can't get on any social media during the day, anything. I just don't want to be distracted. I want to be in the moment and I want to be productive. So
All right. Anyway,
Anywho.
sorry. I derailed this time off
That's a
phones.
great-
We,
that's a
we
great
could get
thing.
into some Apple stuff later on though in the podcast. Not
Absolutely.
today. I'm saying like future
Well,
episodes.
dude, next time they do like product launches and
we can
stuff,
talk.
we're in. Yeah.
We're talking about
Yeah,
it. So
maybe
stay
we'll
tuned
live
for that,
stream it.
guys.
All right. So, new business venture. This is something I'm particularly stoked out of my mind about. All right. So we bought all this cool podcast gear and you know, like it's crazy how affordable it is for one thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like we spent plenty of money getting some midline gear in the podcast studio, but like I love podcasts. I love listening to them. I actually worked many years in the audio industry, so like live sound production, and so I'm just super nerdy about all this stuff. So we're buying all this gear, and I'm like, why is there not a podcast studio in Lancaster? And like I looked it up. There's nothing. I mean, there's some recording studios that'll do podcasts, but to my knowledge, there is not a podcast studio in Lancaster County, which should have something like that available. So the new business venture is
Starting a podcast studio.
Yeah.
Let's go. You guys think all this stuff, oh, business, how do I figure it out? Oh, what do I, what's the next big idea? When you think about something, you Google it, and even if there's just one existing, because they have a monopoly if there's just one. But if there's nothing, fill the space.
Right.
Occupy the space.
Yeah. And how many people do you know? We should do a podcast about that, or we should, you know what I mean? And but the barrier to entry, and especially the barrier to something of high enough quality to feel like it represents you. Like if a business wants to start a podcast and they just buy 2 mics and sit in their conference room with fluorescent lighting and a handy cam, like they're not, or webcam or whatever, they're not going to have the production value that feels like it's their brand. I don't think that should stop them.
Right.
But this is an option where you can come in and rent the studio for an hour or two and walk out that day, have a file delivered to you with your done for you podcast.
One of the things I think you're spot on. Content is king. And when I say, I know we've all heard that content is king, but people have used that in the past for like just putting stuff out is king, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what you're saying is actually king, right? It's more critical. So you could have a fuzzy video and fuzzy audio, and if you're saying really, really good stuff, people will still listen to you.
Yeah.
However, one of my favorite things that Omar El Tukuri from Think Media talks about is that everything about you are a brand.
Shout out Think Media.
Shout out to Think Media.
Check them out on YouTube.
Yes, they're an incredible resource for creators, but he says you are a brand. Everything about you is a brand. So the way you show up on camera is your brand, right? The way you're dressed is your brand. I mean, your glasses, all right? That's integrated into the brand nerd culture.
We had to redesign the logo when I switched glasses.
Exactly. When you switch glasses,
now
we literally changed the brand.
Yeah.
So I think about that. Even today, this morning, I was conscious of what am I wearing today, and does that align with kind of like, my brand? Now you can become over obsessed with that. I'm not saying to like be compulsive about that in an unhealthy way, but just to be mindful of, does your video and audio match the level of excellence that you are putting out? And it's true that people could have great audio and video and not really great content, but if you can consider both and master both.
One of the things that we talk about in live production is, so if you're behind the scenes, like I've run live sound for a lot of concerts and church services and things of that nature. One of the things that we say is your job is to not be noticed. So whenever whenever you've probably been at a concert or a church service or something when like a mic isn't on in time for the person who starts speaking, or the video starts playing but there's no audio, or the audio is really low, or the audio is really loud, or your job is to not be noticed. So the nice thing that's production level. So the nice thing about like coming to a podcast studio that can help take away some of those things that people are going to notice that distract from what you're saying.
Yep.
So, if you've got grainy footage, or you've got poor lighting, or you've got bad audio, that all distracts from what you're saying. And what's cool about this podcast, if somebody watches our first episode, second episode, now third episode, or they're going to see a progression of how quickly this is ramping up in production value.
Yeah. I was thinking, as you just announced that kind of officially, that you could charge it by the hour, right, and do different packages, which you've already done. But my mind just went to, dude, what if you took this podcast studio and made it subscription based? Like what? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, rather than paying X amount per visit, like, is there a way to even structure the packages, like have an hourly package, but then also have a subscription package where it's like you have access, you have X amount of hours per month based on this price point. Yeah. But you have to be locked in for part of the contingency is that you lock them in for 6 months or a year. Right. And it's like, that might even be.
So that is there.
That is there.
The
okay.
pricing that's on the website is based on a 12 episode run. Okay. So essentially you buy 12 episodes at that hourly rate.
Gotcha.
So if you would just say, hey, we just want to do one episode, that would be a different rate.
Right. Okay. Understood.
And that's just, there's built-in efficiencies from working with somebody over time. Yep. And I think one of the things that we can be really flexible right now, like I want to see what is interesting to businesses, because for example, I was watching, I've consumed some content around this. There's not a lot of people that have podcast studios, but one of the people was saying, hey, we have a $5,000 a month done for you podcast bundle. We do all your artwork, your music, we edit, we create shorter form content out of your podcast, all of it done for you. It's just $5,000 a month. And I was going, I don't know many businesses that are going to pay $5,000 a month for a package like that. Yeah. I mean, maybe there's some, don't get me wrong. Maybe there's some, and certainly, like some of this is going to be hobbyists or people who kind of want to do this on the side. Right. Like I can't, like some people have money, they have cash to spend, but I don't think that's a reasonable starting point. I mean, that's kind of the high end. Yep. And I think we can do that. I know we can do that. Literally, we would just be doing what we're doing for our podcast. Yeah. But that's always the way I've done business is I find something that works for my business and then I sell it to other people. So podcasting, that's exactly what this is. This is something that I'm investing in for my business. We're doing it the right way. We're doing it high quality, but we can also do that for other businesses and they can come in and just steal our playbook. Yeah.
Well, I could see even like, even the idea of doing a pod, like I could see businesses utilizing this format for even training videos. Like, I don't know why I'm thinking of like
somebody coming in to do a conference call.
Really?
They're doing a conference call, but it's going to be recorded in a podcast form. They're doing like a virtual interview. And the people that they're doing the interview with like, well, can you go to a studio and record it so that we get the good audio from this versus just your phone? We've all listened to a podcast with the call-in audio and it's choppy and it's obviously an AirPod or a iPhone or God forbid a Android.
We're loyalists.
Green bubble. No,
I could totally see.
I get some of y'all are poor. That's all right.
Exactly. No, I get it.
Maybe not poor financially, but poor in spirit.
Poor in taste as well. I could see someone using that for like a training video or a coaching call. Yeah. Right. Like, which is essentially what you're saying, but like so many different use cases. I mean, even if you're a YouTuber and you just want to sit in front of do a floating head, talking head video, you could do that, right? Like we could put this mic here, set you up behind the wall, and like you could record that with great.
Don't even get me started on like what this could be. Like I already have it in my head where like we have like 4 different sets where people can just come in, and one of them's a talking head set, one of them's and by talking head, I mean just like one person looking down the barrel of a camera. I definitely see that in the future. For now, what we have is exactly what you're seeing here. Plus, I'm sure every episode's going to look a little different until we get.
I think there's some big, medium to big size businesses. I'm thinking like the hospitals, right? Like I'm thinking, I don't know why Kreider Farms keeps coming to mind, but it's a local that they're big enough. But I could totally see them doing like an internal podcast for their employees that's quick.
Yeah.
Like, hey, today you can tune into the whatever podcast, and it's only 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
And we're just going to talk to you about our culture and our values. Right. So rather than us needing to pull the entire company together, it's like we can create a 10-part series that we want the whole company to listen to. Like, what if you instead of getting handed an employee handbook, what if you were handed a pod? And, and they were like, hey, there's 12 episodes on here.
Right.
They're each 5 to 10 minutes. Can you listen to them on the way home? Yep. And consume that content, like thinking differently about the way you're engaging your employees. Like that would be cool.
Yeah. I even think it would be cool to have a portable setup because when you're thinking like an entrepreneur, you're thinking about what are the obstacles that people have to overcome. And sometimes you can get super distracted by that, and that's not good. But I do think that's a legitimate obstacle. Some people are like, well, weekly, if it's for a business, I don't have the time to drive to your studio, be there for an hour and then drive back or whatever that might look like. Right. So my first thought was like, well, we could be open weekends or something. Like they could do it, we could do it like a evening session type thing. But the other option too is actually a portable setup. Like this is a fairly portable setup, and we could systematize it so that it could be even more portable. And then obviously there'd be a premium for it, but we can come to you, and you can find a wall with your logo in the back, or you can find a dark corner where we can light it really nicely, or whatever whatever it might be, and do it on site and get that same production value on site.
Yeah, I just think with video, man, it starts to become like there's endless opportunities.
Yeah.
There's endless opportunities. Like I could even see a CEO doing a talking head video, just like a welcome video. Like you get hired. Like how cool would it be if you got hired from a company and you got a video sent to you just saying hi and welcome. Yeah. And like, we're so glad you're here. It wasn't like a bunch of stuff, but just thinking of different ways to, again, engage.
You know who Gary Vee is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured you did.
Stupid question.
Every now and then I ask people and they're like, no, who's that? And I'm like, okay. But there's a lot of things that Gary does and says that to me are too extreme, but I think his heart's in the right place and it's what he's doing. Like he is Mr. Hustle, do a gazillion things.
Right.
For me, I couldn't do that. But one of the things he says that I think is brilliant is that every company should view themselves as a media company that happens to sell a product in terms of the content that you're creating. And that really is how the best brands in the world grow, is they have an attraction through media, their media, whether it's video, audio, or images. And people find them, they consume them. I mean, we have personal brands, talking personalities and stuff that just podcast or YouTube and then sell products off of that. They've got food products or alcohol products or all these different things, and it's a new monetization strategy for them to actually launch products on top of their media company. Right. So I just think it's one of those things that companies really need to consider. I don't know that it's an adapt or die type scenario, like maybe AI is eventually. But I do think it's super important. And when you combine the two, AI and this into your content creation like we're doing, it's just that next level superpower.
Yeah.
But so anyways, the podcast studio. Let's get into a little bit of that. Currently it's just literally I'm calling it podcast studio at the Brand Nerd or at Brand Nerd.
Yeah.
Like
there's no name or brand.
I didn't create a new brand for it. I use the same brand guidelines as the company. It's a page on the website. I have a company that does branding and websites and content marketing. It's just another service is the podcast studio. I could see it being kind of its own standalone service as well. Its own logo, its own name, but for now, that's not what it is. So, but what I've done so far with it, I think it'd be interesting just for people to follow along on this journey. I know I love business journeys. We have not booked a single paying guest or customer. All I've done though is talk about it on this podcast and post that one picture and talk to a couple friends. I did say we have somebody coming in to do an interview. I think it's either a podcast interview or some sort of interview where they need a good audio, and that's just a friend who was over for dinner and said, do you know a place where I could do this? And I said, actually I do.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Come on over.
Yeah. Be a good test run too.
And I created a landing page. I used AI to write the copy, and so it was really fascinating going, I'm starting a podcast studio, and I want you to write some compelling copy to tell people why they should come to my podcast studio. Okay. And the first thing it did was, all right, if you're going to do a podcast, here are some ideas for podcasting. I'm like, no. This is a podcast studio. Yep. And it's like, okay, here's some equipment for your podcast studio. I'm like, no. Yeah. Have the equipment. It's not a podcast. It's a place where people come to record their podcast. It's a podcast studio. And then it nailed it. Yeah. It's like, and it was funny because like the transcript, like you see it, and the transcript is like, oh, now I understand. Yeah. You're doing a podcast studio where people come to record their podcast.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So I actually used it to write the copy, and then I said, what should I charge for this? And I said, can you write me some packages that I should include for this? And it literally, like, I modified all of them, but it was, again, the blank page syndrome. Like it spit out exactly what I needed to get it to where I actually wanted it to be.
Right.
So yeah, super awesome.
That's awesome.
Using AI. And I mean, like from a marketing perspective, there's still some things to do. Yeah. We got to get the word out there. One of the things I always like to do with my website is have a lead gen of some sort, something people can download. So we'll create some sort of like podcast starter guide or something that they can grab on the website and start building out an email list for the studio. And then a content marketing plan specifically for the studio. Yeah. That's just, obviously it can piggyback on a lot of what we're doing here, which is awesome. Right. But starting to get the word out. Like,
even just to clarify too, we do want to make this a segment of future episodes. So we're kind of going to give intentional check-ins. Of, hey, here's where we're at with it. We booked one person. Like, what? That's crazy.
Exactly.
And hopefully, by a couple episodes, not a couple, but like maybe 10 to 20 episodes in, we've got a couple people booked, and awesome. Yeah,
and I haven't really decided. I don't know that I'm going to do any paid ads or anything just yet. I think I'm just going to let it kind of simmer because we don't need, like, it's not like, it's not like we've bought $1 million worth of gear and the bill's coming due soon. It's everything's bought and paid for, but it would be great to make it back and then some. Yeah. And I just think this is a need. Like, businesses need to be doing this. If we can make it easier for them and we can make it affordable for them and deliver really high value, then it's a no-brainer. If you enjoyed this Brand Nerd podcast clip, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. In the meantime, here are additional videos you might find illuminating.